Hi, I'm Alan.
Hi, this is Dionysus.
Hi, I'm Kyle.
And hi, this is Breaker, and you're listening to Magic Hour, a podcast about all things Treasure DAO. Before we get into this episode, I want to address the recent events that have occurred within the Magic ecosystem. We are aware of the situation, and at the time of recording this podcast, these events had not yet occurred. Originally, the interview with FlowState was going to be supported by some other segments that are no longer of relevance due to these recent events. We do intend to cover these topics in the next episode. And now, without further ado, please enjoy the conversation with FlowState. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a wonderful treat for you this week. The last time we had this gentleman on, we had some audio issues. We've ironed those out, as you can tell from the previous episodes. We're happy to have him back. We're happy that he agreed to come back. Mr. FlowState, welcome back to the podcast.
It's a pleasure to be with you guys once again.
Awesome. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you've been doing with the Treasure DAO team?
Yeah, absolutely. And for those that might have actually not, get to the point of getting to know my profile a little bit, let me just go through 1 single minute of self promotion here so people understand where I'm coming from. I've been trading financial markets, traditional markets as they call it, for over a decade, mainly the currency space. And then I transitioned fully into the Treasure DAO ecosystem. About August, September, I was one of the OGs, and I've been part of the ecosystem ever since. And back in the old days, I used to be kind of like the bridge between the clients at a brokerage firm in Australia and the market itself, and I was helping to dissect the intricacies of the market, which is very timely. And right now, with all the shit show and the macroeconomics that are playing a huge role in the price action of Magic, I think that it is I'm very well equipped to actually understand all the mechanics, all the dynamics around Magic itself. And when it comes to my profile, as you know, once you've read through the Bridgewell white paper, you can be categorized under different sections. So you can actually be very much heavily involved as a crafter, as a quester, as a speculator, as a trader. And just as a disclaimer, for me personally, what clicks the most as part of a participant of the ecosystem, I'm for the most part a trader and a speculator. And so that's really what I have the most fun doing. And right now, I gotta say that over the last 2 weeks or so, I've also convinced my brother-in-law to actually do all the clickings for me. So he's actually sending a few troops for questing and crafting. But for the most part, I am very much focused on doing the heavy lifting on both trading items and also trying to anticipate what's going to be the next metagame. Because one of the things that I noticed, and something that we touched previously, is that being part of the Treasure DAO ecosystem is like a 4D type chess game, and there are so many moving pieces, and so it is like a full-time dedication. It's like a full-time job, right? If you really want to excel at one specific category. So right now, I'm very much into speculating in different items and what I believe to be very under priced items, and it is something that you can get very handsomely rewarded. Either through placing your focus into NFTs in the treasure marketplace, in Magic itself through price action, putting your attention into white listings, because there are tons of white listings that are up for grabs and available. So yeah, I'm just trying to get my attention where I believe to the next opportunity is going to be. And as humans, we are very much like an emotional bunch, and we tend to many times overinflate assets when there is hype around, and then we also tend to undervalue assets based on micro or short-term news or announcements or lack of announcements. Like right now, we're going through a period where there is suppression in both the price of Magic and also the price of NFTs, and I find that to be a terrific opportunity. So that's where I put my boots on, and I really am most dedicated and putting most of my work into finding out what are the most undervalued assets in the marketplace.
Yeah, definitely. And, first off, I just want to say I think it's hilarious that it's your brother-in-law or your brother.
Yeah.
Your brother-in-law
Yeah.
He's like your play to earn assistant. He's just doing all the
Absolutely.
questing
And I
and
think
crafting for you.
I don't think it's just me. I think this is like a growing trend, you know, because at the end of the day, it's just about structuring and framing your day in a way that you can actually become the most productive possible. And I don't think that just clicking is something that requires a high IQ. It's something that anyone can do as long as they're taught how to do it.
I absolutely agree with you, and it's funny that you bring that up too, because when I went to Denver this past weekend, I was talking with some folks over there, and more than one person told me that they have virtual assistants from like the Philippines who are doing whitelist grinds and questing and stuff like that, and playing these play to earn games for them. And they're paying like $500 a month for them. It's very interesting. Uh, some people might say that's exploitive, but I think if certain disenfranchised populations use it as a way to get ahead in life, I don't see anything wrong with it.
There's absolutely zero wrong, and it's something that you can streamline fairly easily. It's something that you just have to dedicate the time and do a bit of that heavy lifting initially so that you can actually provide the education. And then it is very repetitious, it's very mechanical, and something that someone is going to be much more willing to do as opposed to you. You can just dedicate the time to maybe more price assets or more kind of a seeking that high reward, a payoff day by looking at different items through the marketplace and whatnot. And one point that I want to make very clear is that in this game, in Treasure DAO, whatever game you want to focus on, either it's the Small Brains, it's Bridgewell, it's now the upcoming Battlefly. I think that by default, even if we want to call ourselves, oh, I'm a crafter, oh, I'm a quester, at the end of the day, we, for the most part, we all fall under this category of traders and speculators profile as well, whether we like it or not, because like every single person is asking, hey, where is going to be the next transfer of value, where that transfer of value lies? That answering to that question is absolutely king, right? Because that can actually bring far more lucrative outcomes than just essentially passively staking your magic in the Atlas mine. Like, I get it that someone would just set and forget, but for those that want to have skin in the game, I think that's a pretty boring way of going about it. You can place a stack in the Atlas mine, but on a day-to-day basis, there's a lot more that goes on in the Treasure DAO ecosystem. And just to give you an example, like in the last 2 weeks, remember before this pullback, we had a new all-time high printed at around 6.2, 6.3. At that time, I sold 2 Genesis Legions at an equivalent of around 80,000 US dollars, and I recycled that into US dollar because I felt like we were a little bit overextended. Right now, that investment that I recycle into US dollar can afford me 1 Genesis Uncommon and 1 Riverman. So there you go. That is where you can kind of like get to read the market dynamics. You can actually get a sense of, this seems like it's a little bit overinflated, based on all these emotions that were going on. And I was kind of anticipating sooner or later, with so much supply of auxiliary legions coming into the market, they're gonna have to do something about the summoning, either shut it all together or potentially maybe just create some type of like weather type event. And then unless you stake a specific number of items or a certain number of items like prisms or something, they would be shutting down the summoning mechanics. So
wait. So just to be clear, you predicted that they were going to shut down the summoning. You felt that it was going to be necessary?
I felt that perhaps that was, here's the thing. I found that the team was somehow shocked by the ratio of crafters versus questers. I truly, genuinely think that Ant and the rest of the team found that there would be more people jumping into the crafter, which is not what has happened. Even after shutting the summoning, the majority of participants have gone into questing. And I find that people are very apprehensive to breaking their treasures. Now that treasures are so low, maybe that's gonna, even out a little bit. But for the most part, I don't think that the team has yet rebuilt how valuable the harvester bars and what comes as a price, as a reward for those that have been crafting. So people are a bit reluctant to jump into crafting.
I agree with you with everything that you're saying. I also think that it was an issue of not having the right treasures to craft with as well. Because my level 1 crafter needed a T3, a T4, and a T5 treasure. I didn't have any T3s. And I still haven't gotten a T3 even through all the questing that I have. And I have a couple level 3s at this point. I think that that also prevented a lot of people from crafting because I was ready to craft. I didn't give a, if my treasures break, my treasures break. Like I wanted to do the crafting piece and I couldn't. So I think that that was also part of it.
Yeah, somehow I think that the team had, I don't want to say the wrong assumption, but maybe they misplaced their judgment into thinking that people would actually be aping into whatever treasures are needed, regardless of the price of those treasures. And those treasures, when priced into US dollar, which we default back to the unit of account of US dollar. And at the time of the crafting going live online, it was actually pretty pricey to actually obtain a T2 and T3. And we have to target the participants that are not OGs. The OGs, of course, they're going to be aping into crafting, but those make up maybe 200, 300 participants. You want to get 2,000, you want to get 5,000. So you see, like they're always adapting. And I get it that there's always going to be imbalances. There's always going to be things that have been miscalculated. But I find that there was a major disruption and a major shock in the marketplace because, look, maybe people are thinking if they can shut down the mine, if they can shut down the summoning, what comes next? And maybe people might not be willing to invest next 80,000 US dollars worth of, magic into a Genesis Legion because it's very unpredictable the utility of that Genesis Legion if that happens again, right? So it's very early stage in the game, but I think that came a bit as a shock for the audience that is participating in Bridgewell.
I don't disagree with you, and it was a little bit of a shock, but I also understand why they did it.
Yes, exactly.
It remains
it's like
to be
short-term
seen
pain, long-term gain. I get it.
Right. It remains to be seen how effective that was and how impactful it was on the market because even just as early as yesterday, and we're talking February 28th for those listening to this podcast at a later time, the market was pumping a little bit where some legions were going for decent amounts. Like I think I saw a Numeraire go for like 15 K magic, which was fairly high. But then we also saw a Gen Legion go, I think, for 17K, right? An Archer, maybe. But I digress. What I was really interested, Flo, in asking you about was with all the let's just call it geopolitical activity going on around the world, how do you see the impact of that on not just the magic market, but the broader crypto market in general? And then, again, back to the magic market, whether it moves with the broad crypto market, your opinion at least.
Sure. So let's contextualize. Let's just provide a bit of a contextual setting before we really tackle that question. And that is, let's not forget that just a month from today or 5 weeks ago, we had the most bullish unlock in the history of digital assets, and that should be something that is very vivid in our minds. It's something that should not be forgotten. We actually passed that test with flying colors, and so it's something that we have to be reminded because once the market can readjust itself, I believe that magic will continue to march at the tune of its own drums, right? And it was decoupled from Bitcoin and Ethereum, and I think that will remain the case. Now, that being said, right now we are facing what could actually represent a black swan event in the markets because we had a madman at the helm of the Russian government that is willing to go, into unprecedented territory, and the market seems to initially and by initially I mean because the market is a discounting mechanism, they were actually pricing into equities, into cryptos, all this bad news. But what we've seen so far is that the sanctions have come and are getting harsher and are getting tougher, but the market seems to be actually pricing that Putin sooner or later is gonna cave in. And it remains to be seen, right? And for me personally, I think that magic these days, it's very much linked to macroeconomics and where that's going to be taking us. So in regards to the price action itself in the next few weeks, I think that is going to be rather unpredictable and we have to adapt on a headline by headline basis. March, I really believe that I personally have no idea what to expect, and that is very common in an environment where you have to be very dynamic and very much glued to the screen on what are the headlines that are coming through the wires. So I'm not going to be pretending that we can we can attach a high probability outcome to my calls, like, hey, yes, we're going to be higher. Why? Because I'm a treasured down maxi? No, I don't want to be blindfolded into that mentality. Right now, there are a lot of unknowns. And in this type of environment, what is best is to adapt on a day-to-day basis. On top of that, it's something else that is coming in the next week or 2 weeks is also the Federal Reserve. And it's anyone's guess what's going to be the reaction of the Federal Reserve. In the past, crypto market, in a broad sense, it's been very much flowing at the tune of and moving in ebbs and flows at the whim of the Federal Reserve communicating, yes, we want to actually go for an aggressive rate hiking cycle, and then probably also starting the quantitative tightening process. So there's a lot of uncertainties. This is an environment where markets are going to be behaving on a headline by headline basis, and one thing that is going to be certain is volatility, which surprisingly, in case of magic, volatility has been rather reduced in the past few days. We did see tons of volatility, and for me to really make sense of what we've seen in terms of price action in magic, I believe that it comes down to 2 or 3 elements. So number one element that has been impacting the price of magic, in my opinion, is the fact that the macro environment has worsened, and that is impacting everything, or has impacted recently everything. Second of all, we've also seen that there's been a lack of announcements by the Treasure DAO team, and I think they're also learning as they move along. We have been accustomed to the team shipping at a rate that is just incredible, and I think now they're taking their time to actually guarantee that they're going to be minimizing the bugs and any potential failures in the delivery of what comes next in terms of the iterations of the new games. And so that combination, also something that I believe has been impacting Magic, even though I find that to be rather unfair, is the fat that has been building around. For example, JC Cheese, our precious developer, actually was targeted by a guy who, you know, is a so-called influencer. He's got 150,000 followers. And something that John Patton tweeted yesterday, I fully agree. He said that there's been a lot of racks in NFT, and we should not be blaming the ones that had a good intention working as developers in failed projects. Maybe they make decisions that were too harshly, but at the end of the day, like if you were to think along those lines, any Ethereum developer over the past few years that have been working and they've been trying to be accountable in failed projects, they should also be a target, right? So I found that it was very unfair for Cheese to be treated in such a manner. So I think like those are 3 components that have been affecting the momentum of Magic.
Yeah, and first off, you covered a lot of different topics there. So, I just want to touch on the last one you mentioned about the targeting of the developer. I have to agree with you again in terms of if someone's doing the right thing, we should not be trying to cancel them. I hate using that word, but that's the word that everybody will use here. And most people are just headline readers at the end of the day, because we only can consume so much information. So unless you're really, really interested in this, you're gonna read the headline or hear about it, and you're gonna make your judgment based on that. And that can really, harm someone when you're only trying to kind of provide some truth, but you also got to be objective in it and portray the truth in a way that maybe isn't going to harm the other party if they didn't do anything wrong.
And that is actually the news that broke that day. That is actually what took us down of that support level at $5. We broke from $5 to $4, and that was, from a structural perspective, a pretty compromising moment, technically speaking, for Magic. We saw a retest, and then ever since we've gone back down further, deeper into the $3 mark. So now we seem to be in a range between $3 and $4 for the time being. And I just got John Patton's tweet here, like the way he phrases this whole, drama around cheese is like he goes, it's reached the point where one's failure are being weaponized by competitive projects to take out your devs team and discredit you. Failure is okay. So is being paid well for your work, because he was also being blamed by, hey, you've taken an excessive amount of Ethereums for your work. Hey man, I mean, at the end of the day, this is a very innovative, this is a very disruptive industry, and if you're good at your job, you can get paid as much as you are able to nego with the other party, right? So he ends by saying both are to be expected in a high innovation industry. But I think that whatever is within our control, I think that we are really leading by example, by the way we sound, the way that we are shielding ourselves from this fight and counter-attacking these accusations with kindness, with messages of encouragement, but we're not engaging in hostility back to whoever has been the disruptor, whoever has been the one stirring the waters. And that's a good sign. The team is staying the course, and I really like to see that. That's really what's within our control.
Right before this, we were talking Battlefly. We're all pretty hyped about it. Now, Battlefly, it's clear it's gonna it's incentivizing people to buy Magic if they don't already have the 5 Magic, because you have to have 5 Magic in order to mint. It won't cost you the 5 Magic, you just have to have the 5 Magic so you can stake it. And we have surmised that us staking the Magic for them is going to allow them to stake that Magic in the Atlas mine for 2 weeks. My question to you is, what impact do you think Battlefly will have on the market, on the Magic market in general, current events notwithstanding?
So Battlefly, in the grand scheme of things, I believe that is going to have an impact in terms of the number of people that are going to be finding out about the Treasure DAO ecosystem. So in a way, we're going to be opening the floodgates to a lot more people. So a lot more eyeballs are going to realize what Treasure DAO is all about, not just the game of Battlefly, but like the broader ecosystem. And as a starting point, I think that we've seen that through data, through objective data that gets to be provided every single day. We've seen a major spike in wallets that are going to be sitting with 5 Magic. Now the question is, how many of those wallets come 1 month after this minting, or 2 months? How many of these wallets are going to be transitioning and are going to be more engaged and going from 5 Magic to 500 Magic to potentially moving to the group of 5,000 Magic? That remains to be seen, and it's going to come down to how engaging the game is. It's going to come down to the conditions of the market, because let's not forget, natural human nature is going to be very much playing a role here, and that is very much influenced by markets. If markets go up, Bitcoin and Ethereum are sustaining these recent gains, and there's kind of like more green shoots around, then I think that that is going to benefit the Magic price action, and that might actually embolden the willingness for people to actually get more involved. Also, it's going to depend on Battlefly and the integrations that it's going to have. Like, let's just say, for instance, that if you want to upgrade your Battlefly down the line in season 2, you might need to stake a bunch of treasures, so that hopefully we can create a bit more of a supply squeeze in the treasure, T5s or T4s. So those integrations are going to represent an opportunity to get more people that are going to need more magic on board. So it remains to be seen, but I think that out of all the projects, out of all the games, certainly the one that has been generating the most hype and the most momentum is hands down Battlefly, and I'm very optimistic that with someone like Ben at the helm of this game, we are going to see an explosion of fun and onboarding and further onboarding of people. Yeah, and I'm actually quite impressed by how fast they've been to turn around the hacking situation. And it appears like by just judging by the tone of the room and the number of people that are still very much excited about what is to come in the following weeks, I find that they've actually been executing quite well, or they've been recovering, from this kind of like a bit of a fall on that hacking that took place a few days ago.
I hadn't heard about the hack until a couple days ago myself, but you're right. That is very reassuring that they were able to sort out the hack issue and get themselves back on track. Are you playing Battlefly when it launches? I mean, are you gonna have your brother-in-law do your Battlefly activities for you?
To be honest, in this particular game, I think that there's a lot more strategy that is involved, and I'm gonna have to be the one involved, and I'm pretty hype about it, to be honest. And there's a lot more combination. Yeah, there's a lot more combinations. It goes far beyond just clicking, just essentially, acting as a robot by someone just, being in front of the screen and being told what to do. But rather here, there's a more strategic game that goes under the hood. And I want to be the first one that gets hopefully blown away by the experience, and so that I can actually sell this game to even more of my friends, even more of my network of contacts, and really understand from a first-person experience what is it like to participate in Battlefly. So yeah, that's my stance, that's my position there.
Well, I'm just as hyped as you are, and I hope that it's going to bring many people to the Magic ecosystem, and hopefully it's a fun game. You know what? It sounds like it's going to be very interesting and intriguing, and I'm excited to see where it goes, especially with like the 90 playing against 100 other people and stuff like that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Alum, Kyle, do either of you have any questions for Flo?
Honestly, Flo, I love when you're on here. You're always giving us the best insights, the best analytics on everything. How do you see just the volume after this is all done? Do you see it picking back up to what it once was? Do you see this, being staggered at where it is? Do you see this as something that might even drop down in terms of just, just marketing analytics and just the price actions that we get to see on the volume and with volumes and just day-to-day basis? I mean, obviously after the sanctions and everything that are posed and after all this stuff is solved, what do you see Magic being in terms of the price and the volume that we might be seeing after this?
So the volume that we've seen over the last few days, it really tells me that there is a significant disinterest right now to be bidding Magic in a meaningful way. We've transitioned into, as I said before, a temporary regime change in the market narrative. And before, it was more about the perception of Magic price, whether we were at a discount or being a bit overpriced, maybe testing $6, or if we might have gone to $7, maybe that felt a little bit overextended. So that was one major component for the price of Magic to continuously be trading, and what drove the ebbs and flows, and also the internal fundamentals, with some noise caused by the Fed tightening, but that actually proved largely relevant for the price of Magic anyway during pre-Russia-Ukraine crisis. And so today we have to contend ourselves with the price of Magic that is going to be, for the most part, in the foreseeable future, it's going to be directly linked to the sentiment around Russia. Now, the answer that I have to offer to you carries some complexities, carries many moving pieces. So one thing is going to be the Ukraine crisis and whether or not that gets worse. And understanding the swings on the pendulum there is going to matter a lot. Also, something else is that to what extent the team on its own can actually deliver in terms of announcements, in terms of new iterations of the games, in terms of new changes that are going to actually make people more excited. That alone, how much can cause a shift in sentiment? And if I were to see $4, $4.1, that is the resistance that we've been failing at 2 or 3 times. If we can crack that resistance, then that's going to get me excited. That's what I said, that by providing the answer to you, it's something that I have to be revising on a daily basis, and being adaptive in this kind of situations and circumstances is something that goes a long way in getting you a head start and getting you ahead of the game. And so, as I said before, once we actually can turn around in terms of the team finally machine gunning a few extra announcements here and there, and then on top of that, the macro situation. And the macro situation, it's actually, there's an axiom there that I wanted to tackle, and that is that so essentially there might be a potential escalation, and we have to think about putting as someone that I don't think he's going to be caving in anytime soon, because he's going to be otherwise humiliated. Now, Putin has only 2 types of leverage at this point. Either is engaging in a cyber war, or as he has already opened the possibility to, it could actually lead to, he ratcheting up the narrative around nuclear war, right? Which is something that at the end of the day, the axiom goes like this. Look, at the end of the day, if there is someone threatening the market, threatening all of us, or at least at a European level, with a nuclear war, you just buy the fucking dip. Why? Because if there is no nuclear war, markets are going to rebound anyway. And if there is a nuclear war, money in the short term is not going to matter anyway. I mean, let's just face it. So
I agree with you there. I think we have.
Same.
I think I've said before on this podcast, if we get to that point, money's the least of our problems.
Exactly. So the market is always going to be playing. It's going to give the benefit of the doubt to those that are defending the camp of there's not going to be a nuclear war, because if there is, everything goes to hell anyway.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a lot of unknowns, and something that we still have not seen breaking in terms of news, but might happen, is like, look guys, think about it. The fluidity of the news is incredible, and a week from today, it's going to feel like we've gone through maybe a month of news, a month of finding out new stuff. Think about a second. Look, right now, the Central Bank of Russia has got their reserves that are stacked in China, in France, in Japan, in Germany, in different proportions, right? What if one of these, countries like France or Japan confiscates the reserves of Russia, and things, it's like Russia is going to be asphyxiated financially. Well, it already is, right? It's being asphyxiated financially, socially, but on top of that, there's going to be no physical invasion of troops by the US or by NATO for the time being, but they can actually confiscate assets of the Central Bank of Russia. That can actually be seen as the ultimate threat for them to go up one extra level, that threat of nuclear war. I mean, again, it should be a sign, a very, very small possibility. Like, what I like to say is this: nuclear war right now, and take it for what you will, but I think it's a non-zero chance. I think it could be a 0.001 chance. But I after hearing Putin and his defiant stance against the world, I think is a non-zero chance right now of nuclear war happening. But it even feels wrong to talk about this stuff in the 21st century, right? I mean, I never thought in my entire life that we would be talking about this stuff, I mean, everybody wishes that Putin gets ousted, but certainly not at the cost of a nuclear holocaust, right? So,
yeah, I was listening to Breaking Points, which is a podcast that I listen to, and they said the same exact thing you were saying. Like, a non-0% chance of nuclear war is terrifying.
Exactly.
Absolutely terrifying. Yes. I mean,
yes.
I live close to New York City. I'm in Austin, Texas right now. I mean, population centers are targets, right? And That scares the shit out of me. And Frank, I
Let's just shift gears for a second. There's a silver lining here. Despite of all these poor macroeconomic conditions, I think that there's a huge, as I said, like the silver lining here is the fact that all of these events are pointing to the utility and the benefits of crypto over traditional finance, generally speaking. And we've seen that through all the donations that have been made to the Ukrainian government. And it's really hard to ignore this shift that is happening from fiat to crypto. And man, it's about time.
you're spot on there in a number of different ways, right? So first off, cutting people off from their cash is forcing people to buy crypto. And we're seeing it not just in Russia and Ukraine, or supposedly out of Russia and Ukraine, but with Trudeau in Canada kind of threatening to take people's money or freeze their assets, and talking about how exchanges have to be able to do this but not advertise hardware wallets. I think people are starting to wake up to the idea that, hey, if I own crypto, it's a lot more difficult for the government to get it from me.
Yeah.
And that is really impactful.
Yeah.
Impactful
I think we're
to a
starting
lot
to
of
see
people.
that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And then
go ahead.
sorry, I want to just finish this thought. The other thing is that by cutting off Russia from this SWIFT system, that's going to force them to create their own monetary system. And what's going to do it faster than crypto?
There's another standard. It's called CIPS. It's a cross-border international payment system by the Chinese. It's actually been orchestrated and designed by the Chinese. So who knows if SWIFT now is actually going to be, discredited by many institutions, and Russians might actually be, closing and getting closer ties with the Chinese, and there's going to be perhaps, like, if money cannot get to Russia through the SWIFT banking system, maybe that money gets to be diverted into China, and the Chinese send that money back to Russia. So there's always going to be alternatives that they're going to be able to circumvent these problems. But yeah, there's a lot still to uncover, man. I mean, we've seen now Bitcoin flipping the ruble in terms of the ruble is the Russian currency in terms of market capitalization. That tells you something, that the tide is turning in terms of the interest of people of holding their fiat currency as opposed to Bitcoin. Also, we've seen inflows into Bitcoin from the moment that there was a blockage of SWIFT, and that actually also has led in the domestic economy in Russia to a rapid rapid dollarization. The currency demand now is paid the US dollar is paid at a premium on the streets, up to 30%. So essentially, Russians are reportedly now withdrawing US dollars at a more than a 30% premium. And there's now a flight to crypto to move assets outside of the country and also liquidate positions. That's a possibility that Russians still have access to, and they're going to keep doing. And if people in Russia feel like they're going to be blacklisted from exchanges, if people in Russia feel like they're going to be faced with bank runs, I think it makes sense that anyone with money over there is going to be buying as much Bitcoin, as much, for the most part, Bitcoin, right? That's the one that has been kind of like shaping up the narrative in terms of a safe asset or a store of value, right? So I find that rather compelling case for Bitcoin to remain bullish on the back of these events that have recently happened with Russia being blocked from the SWIFT system, and maybe these oligarchs are not going to have the same direct access to the wealth, or even if they do, they're gonna have it in a very short-term basis. So they better get their act together and divert that, maybe a portion of it, into cryptos. It's been rather bullish, the price action we've seen in Bitcoin, with momentum continuing to the upside.
Yeah, I was reading a tweet just speaking about Russians paying premiums, I was reading a tweet
Yeah.
the other day that Russians are paying $20,000 premium to buy Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean, you know what happened today to me? Yesterday, I went to the bank. I mean, I was just opening up a new account for an entity that opening here in Bali, Indonesia, and the bank was. Let me just give you a bit of a context. Bali has become a preferred destination for Russians. I don't know what the hell
Okay.
has happened here, and I've just been trying to connect the dots. Why the heck Russians are picking Bali as a destination for them to live here? I suppose it could be a combination of cheap lifestyle, good weather, essentially the opposite of what they get in Russia, I suppose. And the bank was filled with Russians, and I overheard conversations with a teller that it was about sending US dollars from from Russia into Bali, and I mean it kind of was the dominant conversation, and I overheard a couple of them. So it tells me that there could be a major influx of Russians wanting to escape Moscow, Russia while they can, and maybe heading to this kind of destination, especially now that Bali has lifted the restrictions and there's no longer quarantine. So you see, like just like in Bridge World, just like in Treasure DAO, I always like to think about one step ahead. You know, what comes next? Like, let's not be fixated on what happens today, but what happens today. What does it mean tomorrow, right? And that's how the markets actually behave at the end of the day. And that's what makes you, as a participant of Bridge, as a participant of Treasure DAO, that's what makes you at the end of the most money. And talking about this, maybe we can kind of tie this into my place, my favorite bets right now in the marketplace.
Sure, let's do it.
Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah.
right now, for the most part, you guys can agree with me that both the price of Magic and also the NFTs are pretty suppressed, which is surprising to see because normally the dynamic has been such where when the price goes down, the NFTs that are going to be serving somehow as a hedge are going to either remain at the same level or increase, right? So one thing compensates the other. But that is something that counter cyclicality has not been playing out. So either you accept that Treasure DAO has failed as a project, or there's going to be some massive rebounds in terms of the Magic valuations attached to some of these NFT items. So for me personally, I think that right now the team is approaching late stage before making an announcement that is going to make the prisms small, medium, large, and also the shards. There's going to be some type of ratio, meaning you can go to a merchant and you can exchange, let's just say 100 shards for one small prism, or maybe if that ratio is 50, all the better, because I've been scooping up thousands and thousands of prism shards because I just find them to be like very at a very interesting discount. And something that also helps me to kind of cement this idea is the team in the at the time when they release Bridgewell, and you could go to the barracks and recruit a legion for, was it 10 magics or 20 magics? That recruit would be able to would be getting a sense of light guaranteed, but only a 50% chance of a prism shard, right? Unless I'm mistaken here. But if that is the case, the team from the very beginning thought that prism would be more valuable than essence of light. And right now there is a disparity of 3-1, whereas prism of shard, although you have to think in terms of bulk quantities that you're going to buy, because there's been so much algorithm activity, it just keeps undercutting. So it's a bit of a misrepresentation, but I'm very bullish, and I think that the summoning will be reactivated soon, but you're going to have to stake certain number of items, and that would be either prisms. Yeah, for the most part, I think it's going to be prisms, and they've already given us some hints. So that's one big explosion in value that I want to be part of, and then selling to, I'm afraid to say, but it may sound not it may not sound really legit as a maxi, but I will then sell the majority of it to those latecomers. So, be part of the game, be a good speculator, and be with me now accumulating when it's really cheap, not when the FOMO comes in at two magic. That's probably when I'm going to be selling them to you, right? So that's one. And then we've now got space treasures being farmed by the small brains. And John Parmesano, back in early February, told us in Discord, and I think that actually kind of got lost, but he said that those treasures are going to be the rarest and they will never break. And we now have the chance to farm 5 of them: moon rocks, stardust, comet shards, lunar gold, and alien rocks, I think. So right now, being a small treasure accumulator sounds to me like it's a very good speculative plan. Why is that? I mean, especially knowing that the small coin is coming, it's around the corner, maybe it's a few weeks away. And if they're going to be bootstrapping small coin in the upcoming launch, the same way that they did bootstrap Magic back in the first Genesis mine in September 2021, which I was part of, and then I really imagine that there's going to be some type of scoring type system for the distribution of these small coins, which means that the more you hold these small treasures as points, and they're going to be based on points, based on the probabilities of small treasures being dropped, the more that you're going to be able to collect small coins. So this means that accumulating tons of moon rocks and tons of stardust at the current price, to me, sounds like a phenomenal idea, and many people are sleeping on. Next, I find that there is unsustainable compression between T3 treasures in terms of the bridge wall, T3 treasures and T2 treasures. And this compression, this narrow range, is about 100 magic. So let me explain. The lowest price T3 versus the highest price T2, the difference is only about 100 magic. It's never been the case.
I lost you.
It used to be. So think about.
Can you hold on? I'm sorry. Can you?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Can you start that again, because you cut out for like
Okay.
5 seconds.
Okay. So think about the T3 treasures, the group of T3 treasures, and then think about the group of T2 treasures, right? Now, so the difference between the lowest price T3, you could think about a pot of gold or a jar of fairies. So the difference between the lowest price T3s versus the highest price T2, like a bait for monsters or mollusk shell, that difference in price from the lowest to the highest in different groups is about 100 magic, which it's never ever been the case. It used to be 3 times or 4 times. Okay, so now I'm also accumulating bait for monsters. I am accumulating what is the other one? Thread of Divine Silk and mollusk shell, because in terms of the scoring system, they are way too far ahead. So I'm expecting in season 2, whenever maybe the legions go into fighting, whenever there is more disputes, these treasures are going to be highly precious once again, especially the T2s, the T1s, maybe to even in season 1 when the harvesters are released. I think that there's going to be also a lot more integrations in different ecosystems, including Battlefly, as we talked before. And so that is something that GARP has already been teasing us with, has already been providing hints that there's going to be a lot more integration. But the jury's still out there. Why? Because at least in this last alpha play of mine, I also have to account for tons of treasures that are going to be coming from L1 into L2. And I think that the team now is very much mindful that there is an oversupply of treasures. So those that are desperate, thinking, hey, I wish I could have my treasures from L1 tomorrow, I think that's kind of is going to get delayed, because otherwise that's only going to exacerbate the supply problems that we've seen.
I hadn't ever thought about that either. Good point.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, going back to you, because you brought up something that has been stuck in my mind for a while now, and that is there's going to be thousands and thousands of people now that are new to the ecosystem that are going to be onboarded through Battlefly, and the real question is not going to be that they remain having 5 magic buys or 5 magic wallets, which that's not going to be making much of a difference. It's more about, and what would be amazing is, can we convince these people to add an extra 500, 1000 magic in those wallets? That's what's going to make a difference.
What if they win it?
Yeah.
That'll make it easier, right?
Yeah.
And people like to gamble too, as we've learned. We're all degens at the end of the day.
Remember that the more they get hooked up in that game, and the more integration of NFTs, hopefully that's going to happen. And something that Garb has already kind of given us a high there's like a high likelihood that that's happening, that treasures are going to be integrated into Battlefly, going to be integrated in Toadstool, it's going to be integrated in hopefully Peekaboo. So we've been experiencing the pain of the supply excess in treasures. Hopefully we can move into the opposite spectrum, where we see the overutilization of these treasures and causing that demand to explode, and a supply shock.
Kind of like a tidal wave. Like it's just building and building and building, and eventually it's just going to crash and wash all over us.
Yeah, and think about it. At the end of the day, look, neither N nor Garb nor the economists, they're never going to be able to develop the perfectly balanced game. And even if they, for some miraculous reason, they did, there's always going to be constant imbalances. And these imbalances is precisely what you're talking about, is the tide that rises and just goes back. And it really is what personally to me makes me the most excited about being part of this ecosystem. Not just aside from the community, aside from talking to amazing people like you guys, aside from being in Twitter and just kind of like relating to so many of the people that have made it into this ecosystem. But it's like these constant imbalances is very exciting. It's like playing, as I said before, right, going back to the starting discussion we had, like this 4D type chess game that keeps you always questioning what's the next move, what's going to be the next trend that is going to be evolving. And sometimes you also have to be very bold and break your own rules. Like, maybe your rules are that you are already over invested in a certain particular NFT or whatever. But in my opinion, I had the view that treasures around 30 to 20 were pretty cheap, and so now I'm doubling down in treasures at 3.5, at 4, because I think that ultimately there's going to be a lot more utility. Because not having like a project like Treasure DAO that calls itself Treasure, I think it's kind of a bit of a failure, that they are not going to make these items as there's going to be heavy utility that's gonna come out of these items. And we just gotta be patient. You just gotta be patient for that to play out.
This was wonderful. I enjoyed talking with you.